As a cognitive behavior therapist, I spend a lot of my time helping people to fight their negative thoughts, identify what's not good for you, and then replace it. And it actually is quite a lot of work. So, on one hand, it can be quite nice just to sink your teeth in and to actually reality test and what are these thoughts telling me. But there are times when you're just exhausted. And that is also the case with obsessive thoughts, where you know that this ruminating or obsessing actually is negative, it's irrational, you don't want it. So, what do you do then? So, this is where acceptance and commitment therapy comes in, ACT. And it's pretty much a combo of CBT and mindfulness. So, I'd like to talk about what it is briefly and then go into two of my favorite parts of it. So, what is ACT anyway? Well, it's not really about fixing your thought. It's more about learning to live with them. And the good news is that if you just sit with them and live with them for a while, they often tend to settle down. And again, you've got to know, when do I use CBT? When do I use ACT? But let's experiment. Okay, so there are 6 core processes of ACT. I'll tell you what they are, and then I'm going to talk about my 2 favorites. So number 1 is defusion. I'll come back to that. And second is acceptance. That's the A in ACT. I'll come back to that. And then just for interest, the other ones are present moment awareness. And that really is about showing up here in the here and now, not being somewhere else in your head. There's another interesting one called self as context, which is basically that you are more than your thought. And then the next one is values, which is where you clarify what really matters and then act in accordance with that. And finally, the C, the commitment part, which is about committed action. And that's about doing what matters, even when it's hard. So in my next post, I'll unpack those 4. But for today, let's start with defusion, which for me is such a game changer. Right, so instead of trying to push away thought, defusion teaches you to step back and to observe them. So you're not the thought, and the thought is not the truth. And let's think about this. Can you recall a thought you've had recently that brought up anxiety or frustration? So one of the classic ones is, I'm not good enough. I always make a mess. So from a CBT perspective, you would then look at the evidence and you would gather it and reality test. But here's the ACT method. So step 1, you had your sentence, I'm not good enough. So let's add, I'm having the thought that. So listen to this one. I'm having the thought that I'm not good enough. And notice how just adding, I'm having the thought creates that little bit of distance. So that's defusion. You're not your thoughts, you're simply noticing them. Okay? Step 2, let's take it a little bit further. And you say it with even more detachment. So instead of, I'm not good enough, or I'm having the thought that I'm not good enough, you would say, I notice I'm having the thought that I'm not good enough. And when you say it like this, the thought itself becomes less powerful. It's just one part of your experience and not an absolute truth. And then you don't need to react to it. You can just let it be. And then there is a step 3, if you have a sense of humor, which is where you could sing it or say it in a silly voice, maybe a cartoon voice or an animal voice, grounded, something like that. And what that does is it makes the thought less threatening. And again, it puts a little bit of space between you and the emotion. So basically, diffusion doesn't make the thought go away. It just gives you a little gap between you and the thought. And then you can choose, do you want to just wait it out? Do you want to act on it? Will you come back to it later? So that's number 1, diffusion. Then the second part that I wanted to talk about, or the second process in ACT, is the A, which is acceptance. And basically, it's about working with discomfort in a specific way. And we're definitely seeing this a lot more in the mainstream CBT, where it's about riding out that unpleasant feeling that the thought brings. Now, when I hear the word acceptance, it's not one of my favorite words. I think in the modern Western world, we struggle a little bit with that. And there are concepts like radical acceptance. That sounds quite tricky for someone like me who like to be active and getting in there. But the idea is not to accept that everything is perfect. No. But accepting that discomfort is just a part of life. And if you've done that, then you can accept and make space for this in your view of reality. So we know that resistance and force will lead to more of the same. Think about when you try to debate with a toddler about bedtime or a teen about screen time, and you're trying to win with force, and you pushing, they pushing, you're both resisting. Think about when you're trying to get rid of a bad habit. Maybe you're trying to cut down on coffee or sugar, and you're using that force internally, internal power to resist that urge. What happens? The urge fights back, and that's all you can think about. And eventually you're exhausted, and then it's more likely you'll give in. So this works for when you have a strong emotion or even a strong physical feeling, a craving, anything like that. You acknowledge it instead of pushing it away. So you feel, say, anger or fear rising, and you're not avoiding it. What you're doing is you're saying to yourself, I'm noticing that I feel angry or scared, and that's okay. I accept, and I'm allowing this to be here right now. So I'm accepting that it's here right now. This is my experience. And if you like, you can even imagine that you're holding this emotion in your hand, and you're just letting it exist there, a lump of this feeling, without trying to change it. So this doesn't mean that you have to like the anxiety or the anger or even the pain or the discomfort, but you stop fighting it. And you can think about it like this. Just like you can't fight the rain, you can't actually fight your emotion. The more you accept them, the less power they have over you. And that's what you actually want. So think of emotions like waves. They come and they go. And if you fight them, it's like trying to swim against the tide or hit the waves. It doesn't really work, does it? But if you let them flow and you ride the wave, eventually that will subside. So acceptance is really teaching you to experience the emotions without letting them control you. And remember, this is not about controlling your mind. You're learning to work with your mind by using acceptance. So I hope you've enjoyed those two techniques, and I hope that you'll join me in taking these first steps towards a different relationship with your thoughts and feelings. So you don't necessarily need a quieter mind. I'm not sure that's always possible. You just want to have a better relationship with it. If you found value, please share, please subscribe, and thank you for listening.